नमस्ते दोस्तों, आपका गोल्ड प्राइस टुडे न्यूज़ में स्वागत है। और आज हमने बहुत ही खास शख्सियत का इंटरव्यू किया है। ये है सिल्वर गुरु डेविड मॉर्गन। ये फाउंडर भी हैं द मॉर्गन रिपोर्ट के और बहुत ही बढ़िया गोल्ड और सिल्वर के एनालिस्ट हैं। तो इन्होंने अपने इंटरव्यू में क्या कुछ कहा वो मैं पहले आपको हिंदी में समझा देता हूँ। जो लोग अंग्रेजी नहीं समझते उनके लिए मैं एक जिस्ट बता देता हूँ। डेविड मॉर्गन के मुताबिक इस साल सोने चांदी में अच्छी खासी तेजी रही और अभी इनको लगता है कि सोना चांदी एक ओवरबॉट पोजीशन में पहुंच गया था। इस साल के अंत तक इनको लग रहा है कि एक ट्रेंडिंग रेंज में रह सकता है और अगले साल इनको लगता है कि ब्रेकआउट तेजी की तरफ हो सकता है, मतलब अगले साल उसमें तेजी आ सकती है। अभी एक ट्रेडिंग रेंज लग रही है इनको नवंबर दिसंबर में इनको एक ट्रेडिंग रेंज लग रही है। और ब्रिक्स पर जो ट्रंप ने टैरिफ लगाने की बात की है, इनका यह मानना है कि एक तरह से ये शो ऑफ है। और अमेरिका में ये चेक्स एंड बैलेंस है, मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि उन्होंने कह दिया तो 100% टैरिफ लगा देंगे। इसको कांग्रेस में ले जाना पड़ेगा, कांग्रेस में पास कराना पड़ेगा। और साथ ही इनका मानना है कि दूसरे देशों पर टैरिफ लगाने से किसी का भी भला नहीं होता है। सोने के भाव पर इनका ये मानना है कि यहाँ पर बॉटम बन रहा है सोने के भाव का। और चांदी यहां से 30-35 डॉलर के बीच में रह सकती है। वहीं सोना जो है $2,800 तक भी जा सकता है। अगले साल क्या मानना है इनका, अगले साल 2025 में इनको लगता है अंत तक, 2025 अंत तक सोना $3,000 का लेवल देख सकता है। और चांदी जो है $40 तक पहुंच सकती है। हालांकि इनका ये मानना है कि 2025 सोने चांदी के भाव के रिटर्न के मामले में 2024 जैसा नहीं रहेगा, मतलब जैसा जितना रिटर्न इस साल मिला है उतना रिटर्न अगले साल मिलने की संभावना नहीं है। हालांकि 2026 में इनका मानना है कि बड़ा भाव में उछाल आ सकता है। साथ ही इनका मानना है कि अब 2025 में सोने चांदी में बने रह सकते हैं। और गोल्ड सिल्वर रेशियो को लेकर डेविड मार्कन का मानना है कि ये नीचे आएगा। और रूस ने जो चांदी अपने रिजर्व में खरीदने का फैसला किया है वो एक बड़ा कदम है। और अगर दूसरे देश भी इस तरह का कदम उठाते हैं तो वहां पर भाव में तेजी देखने को मिल सकती है। और इनका यह मानना है कि एआई रिवॉल्यूशन से भी गोल्ड और सिल्वर की डिमांड में तेजी आएगी। साथ ही चांदी का जो डेफिसिट है, चांदी की जो मांग, जैसे जो सप्लाई और मांग में जो कमी है वो अगले 10 साल तक बनी रह सकती है। एक और चीज बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग इन्होंने बताई है, वो ये बताई है कि ये जो हम जियो पॉलिटिकल टेंशन की चर्चा करते हैं, जो अलग अलग देशों के बीच में युद्ध होता है उसकी वजह से सोनी चांदी के भाव में उठापटक होती है। तो इनका यह मानना है कि चांदी का मिलिट्री में भी बड़ा यूज होता है और उसके बारे में कोई चर्चा नहीं करता। तो उसकी भी एक कारण है, उस वो भी एक कारण है सोने, खास तौर पे जो चांदी है उसकी तेजी के पीछे। और अगर इस तरह के युद्ध होते हैं, इस तरह की चीजें होती है तो चांदी की डिमांड बढ़ेगी और डिमांड बढ़ने से प्राइस भी बढ़ेगा। तो जिन लोगों को अंग्रेजी आती है उन लोगों को के लिए अब मैं आपको इंटरव्यू सुना देता हूं सिल्वर गुरु डेविड मॉर्गन का। मुझे कमेंट में जरूर लिख के बताइएगा कि आपको ये इंटरव्यू कैसा लगा दोस्तों। Hello, friends. Welcome to our show. And I am Virendra Vyas. And today we have a very special guest joining us. None other than David Morgan, the founder of the Morgan Report, a renowned precious metal analyst and widely known as the Silver Guru. David's profound insights into the precious metal market, especially in silver, have made him one of the most respected voices in the industry. Welcome, David, to our show.
Well, thank you very much. It's a first time with you. I'm very pleased.
How do you see the recent volatility in the prices of gold and silver?
I think they're to be expected. I mean, gold and silver both had a very, very strong year this year, as you know, in all currencies, making new highs in US dollar terms, which it hasn't done for some time. And we probably temporarily got a little bit overbought. So we need time to consolidate, which means, the volatility that we've seen will probably start to subdue somewhat. I see a trading range till the end of the year and perhaps beyond, but there will be a breakout, most likely the upside next year.
So How do you see that recent Trump statement on BRICS that they will impose 100% tariff if you will go away from the dollar and consider your own BRICS currency like that? Is there a only discussion type of thing, or he can implement all those and its impact on the gold and silver market?
Well, I'm going to give you my take. I think it's absolutely absurd. And I put that out on Twitter. I used an article, I think it was in one of the New York publications, but Dr. Judy Shelton put it out and I got it from her and I retweeted it. But I think it's for shock value. Trump has a sort of a characteristic of doing things and saying things and tweeting things. I think primarily for shock value. I don't take much of any politician at face value. So I think it was more of a show off kind of a statement to kind of, you know, shock. I really don't, it's absurd to think that they could really do that. He acts as if he's got all this authority and all this power at the executive level, but we don't. He doesn't. I mean, there are three branches of government. There are somewhat checks and balances, and you just can't mandate 100% tariff because you want it. You'd have to go through Congress and everything else. So, on face value, uh, frankly, I think it made him look rather uninformed. But other people just see it as, a statement that has meaning. I think it's way overdone, and I think it also hurts a bit because you know I think you should act presidential. I mean, not act presidential, be presidential. And, negotiating is fine in business and it's required in diplomatic circles. I don't want to go too far down in the weeds here. You can bring me back. But I think he could have thought that through and just kept his mouth shut or made a more important statement like the dollar is still the reserve currency because we still are going to maintain stability in the financial markets or something along those lines.
And will this tariff issue for the next 4 years create trouble for the Fed because of that? He said recently that he will impose 10% tariff on China and 25% each on Mexico and Canada. So will this trouble Fed and will this increase inflation? And there might be an impact on gold prices.
You only have to go back to really not that long ago. If you go to the Smoot-Hartley Act in the Great Depression in the 1930s, that was all about putting tariffs on other countries. And it made the Great Depression a greater depression. It doesn't help anyone. And now, coming from the Austrian school, and I think the Austrians don't have it 100% perfect, but I think they have it probably the best of most economic philosophies. And by having a free market, that means free everywhere. And so putting tariffs on, you can make the argument, well, it protects our workers and it makes a level playing field. The problem and the argument really is that what isn't subsidized. So if you're subsidizing your manufacturing base to produce a product at a lower price, but you've really made up the difference in cost because you subsidize it, well, that's not free either. So I'm more philosophically inclined for free markets across the board. No subsidies, no tariffs. But we really don't live in that world. So, in a practical perspective, even knowing that there's subsidies that take place all over the world, is a tariff going to make it better or worse? Oh, there might be an instance or two it makes it better, but on aggregate, on the whole, it doesn't help. It hurts. And will it affect prices? Yeah, it affects prices of everything. And so that means there'll be more price increases. People call it inflation or they'll blame the tariffs or whatever. All they really care about, it costs me more to live. And that will put more pressure on the precious metals to the upside. It could cause a momentary decline like we've witnessed, and I think we're going to talk about in a moment with Trump being elected, and then gold got smashed down for a little while, but it's caught a bottom here. It's probably going to start back up.
So, as you said, gold found its bottom, gold and silver, or will there be more decrease in the near future in the short term?
It's in a trading range, and the trading range hasn't really been established fully yet. but I think we've probably gotten pretty close to the bottom in both gold and silver. Basis momentum uh, and the commitment of traders report. If you look at the commitment of traders report, it's pretty good at defining when the bottoms are in on open interest. So the open interest in gold is at a level where it usually starts back up, and the open interest in silver is pretty much at a level where it usually starts back up. So it's no guarantee, but it's a clear indicator. So I think we're going to again wallow around, maybe in the 30 to 34 or 5 in silver. It may cycle in that range for a while. And gold, this recent bottom up to maybe, $2,800 level and maybe back down. But yeah, are we absolutely certain, David, that those bottoms are it? No, we're not. But what's pretty close.
So most of the investment bank and big brokerage houses predicting the $3,000 in 2025 by December in Goldman and all other. So do you see 2025 we will get a chance to see $3,000 and around 35 or $40 in silver?
Yeah, we saw like what 30% increases in both metals this year, which was very good. And if we apply that, to gold, we're looking at over $3,000 gold next year, and silver, excuse me, probably around the $40 level. I think that's about what we're going to expect. I don't think we're going to see as strong a market percentage terms next year as we saw last year, or this year, I should say. So 2025 will be strong, but not as strong as 2024. I think that will be kind of the markets waiting to see what all the implementations of this Dodge situation with the Vic and Elon Musk and cutting back on government regulations and government bureaucracies. Everyone's going to pause and be a little bit cautious. So I don't think there's going to be as much of a run to gold as there might be otherwise. But I still think it'll work its way higher. After that's kind of been established, and we see how much was a big tweet to scare everybody, like the 100% tariff we just talked about, and how much is based in actual reality. Once that's determined, and I'll give it about a year, then I think the markets will adjust and say, okay, we have a pretty good handle on what's really going to take place. A lot of it's talk. Some of the actions were taking place, but not to the level that they talked about it. And now we need to get back in the gold market. So I think you're going to see the big acceleration in gold probably in the 2026 timeframe, but I think 2025 will certainly worth being in the market.
And your thoughts on India?
Well, India has been silver's best friend for many years and gold as well, but they've really accelerated the silver purchases of late, as you well know. And one of the reasons, of course, is India is going to put together the largest solar farm in the world. It will cover the landmass of Paris, France. And so that requires a lot of silver. And, from all my work over all these years, I mean, the Indian population really coveted silver more than gold because the net worth of the general population was lower than it is now with the innovation and technology in India having so much to do in the technological world now that they favored gold in the middle class. Excuse my cough. I'm sorry. But now you also see them shifting back to silver because they understand the gold silver ratio, and it's cheaper to buy silver. So it's both. They really affect both. I mean, if there's one thing to say about India, they understand the monetary currency problem. And there isn't an Indian that I've ever met that doesn't understand the monetary situation for what it is, whereas many North Americans really don't.
Will this gold silver ratio go down or go up? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it'll come down. I think at the top of the market, the gold silver ratio could be 40 to 1 instead of over 80 to 1, which means that silver will outperform gold on a 2 to 1 basis at the top of the market.
And your thoughts on that Russia's recent decision in their federal some budget statement that they will also buy silver for their reserve along with the gold and platinum and other metals. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
I think Russia could have an effect. Obviously, buying a little has a little effect. If it buys a lot, it'll have a bigger effect. I think the main point is that I think they're buying it for strategic purposes, not for monetary purposes. But I think it's also a wake-up call to other nation states. Silver never asked the question, why are you buying me? Are you buying me to put me in a computer? Are you buying me, for monetary reasons? It's just bought. And from that aspect, I think if other nations look at it and say, you know what, we should get a strategic amount of silver as well. We may need to put solar panels out in the future. We may as well get it now. Silver's not getting any cheaper. So if that spills over into other nation states, and I believe it could, then I think it'll have an effect. If Russia's the only game in town that's doing it, it won't really move the market that substantially unless they really go in deep. And I don't think that they will. At least they haven't so far. So it's kind of a tough question to answer. I've already written about it, and that's basically what I said in my last report on Russia. If it wakes others up, other nation states, and say, hey, we want it for a strategic reserve or a monetary reserve. We just need silver. We need to stockpile. And then, it's a situation where one nation may follow another nation may follow another nation. And if that were to occur, we could see even further pressure to the upside of the silver market.
And my last question, will this silver deficit will continue in 2025?
Going to continue for the next decade. In theory, we could be out of above ground stockpile as early as 5 to 7 years. Now, that's in theory. I mean, price is the arbitrator of supply and demand. And as the price goes higher, people that are hoarding silver or keeping it for investment purposes are more likely to give it up for the right price. So the market has a way, price will mitigate most shortages. But having said that, it could get in a situation, especially under high inflationary conditions, or unfortunately, I don't even like to say it, the war situations, if they accelerate or get worse, there's more fear in the market. Europe is frightened that, war will break out further across other borders and that type of thing. If those things were to occur, we can't rule them out. We both know that. Then in that instance, you'd probably have not only more of a strategic demand for silver, but certainly more of a monetary safe haven demand. And that would push prices even higher. So I'm bullish. I don't want to be bullish for, reasons of fear. I want to be bullish for reasons of industry and sound money purposes, and to put governments in their place where the people control what their own real wealth or savings is in real savings rather than in government fiat. But having said that, you can't rule out that we're in trying times.
And this AI thing, AI revolution, AI thing, will there be a demand for gold and silver from that?
Yeah, primarily silver. I mean, you have a lot of silver in chips, 44 million ounces per year, basically making chips. And then, of course, all these computers use some silver. There's gold in some as well. And it's basically the energy demand that you need for AI, and that means more electricity, which means more silver. So there's a lot of push for more and more silver being needed as we go into the technological age in even a greater way than we've already experienced.
And one more, my last question about the geopolitical tension. I was hesitant to ask this because we can't predict these things, what will happen in Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Iran and Hezbollah and all. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are silver is a metal of war. I mean, you don't ever get a breakout from the main Silver Institute or CPM Group or Metals Focus or any of these uh, facilities that give us an aggregate use of silver for industrial, solder, photovoltaics. They never break out the military usage. They're buried within the electronics and that type of thing. It's used by the military quite extensively. So, because we are in that situation, if it were to accelerate or just to continue, there'll be greater pressure on silver for military purposes. Again, it isn't broken out in the studies. They don't want to break it out. They want to keep it, but buried within the silver used for solder, the silver used for photovoltaics, silver used for electronics, all those numbers, part of those numbers are military use. And so they give us the facts. They just don't break it out where, well, 80% of that is civilian use and 20% of that is military use. As that example, we could see where in the future you might see where that number, whatever that number is for solder, that 80, 90% of it, well, let's say 70% is civilian and 30% is military because they've had to build back, things that got blown up or they need more hardware for, batteries in the field or whatever. I don't want to go into the weeds too far, but to get my point, I think I'm trying to make it clear that military use will increase, not decrease, which means more demand.
So much, David, for joining with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.